Good evening, everyone. Happy Monday night. Welcome back to the Bullpen Podcast. Again, happy Monday, everyone. I am your host, Adam Kunos. You can follow me on Twitter at Kunos19. You can also follow the show, The Bullpen Podcast, at The Bullpen Pod on Twitter. Also, head over to our YouTube page and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more baseball content this upcoming season. We are sponsored by Fanatics. Use the Linktree link in our Twitter bio to head over to Fanatics for all of your 2023 spring training gear. Yes, they just released the spring training gear. If you're a fan that has they had last year with the mesh backs, they are back for another season. I know those were kind of a 50-50. You either loved them, you either hated them. So I know a couple of players in the league absolutely hate them. But they are back for another season, along with shirts, sweatshirts, and jerseys for the upcoming spring training season. Also, head over there for your 2023 World Baseball Classic year. Yes, the World Baseball Classic is weeks away, as teams will be reporting to not only spring training camps, but World Baseball Classic camps as well. So head on over to Fanatics for all of your upcoming Major League Baseball gear. All right, so as usual, welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for listening. If you're listening to the show in the next couple of days, thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for subscribing to our show. I truly appreciate the support and the downloads that come with this. So we usually go on Sunday evenings. However, we did have a little event yesterday called the Super Bowl. Yes, Super Bowl 57 was yesterday. An absolute fabulous game from start to finish. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs on winning their third Lombardi Trophy. They defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. A last-minute field goal with 9 seconds sealed the win for Kansas City. Congratulations to Patrick Mahomes, who took home his second Super Bowl MVP trophy. And obviously, he did the iconic "I'm going to Disneyland" commercial after that. Yes, it's Disneyland. Usually it's Disney World, but since they're on the West Coast, a little easier to get to the West Coast Disney than it's East Coast Disney. But a great game overall. I did watch the game. I had my wife watch the game with me. We had some friends over. We made chicken wings, meatballs, chips, dips, drinks. We had the whole spread out for the entire game. It was a great game, in my opinion, a good offensive game. I thought this would be more of a defensive game, but I should have known better when you have Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts behind the center of each team, just throwing the ball, running. Jalen Hurts ran for about 3 touchdowns, I believe. A little dodgy when Patrick Mahomes did limp off the field. I think everyone in Kansas City and in Phoenix were holding their breath at that time when he was limping off the field at halftime. But, if you get into the Super Bowl, you got an extra halftime show. You had Rihanna performing at halftime, great halftime show. But obviously that kind of helped him get better, and he came back out and he just let it come back for the Chiefs. So, again, congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. The NFL season is wrapped up for the year. Chiefs are going to be going into next season defending Super Bowl champions. Could this be the building of a dynasty for the Chiefs in Kansas City? Who knows? I recommend, again, this is a baseball podcast. We won't dive too much into football, but if you have any good football podcasts, definitely hit them up because they'll give you better insight on if the Kansas City Chiefs will be able to repeat as Super Bowl champions next year. A couple of other things. We're going to kind of do a little bit something different with the show. We're going to kind of talk about some stories that are non-baseball related, and this next story kind of is something that I love. Is Linkin Park released a new song on this past Friday called Lost. If you haven't heard it, go on Apple, go on Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get your songs from or music from. Also go on YouTube, watch the music video. This is a brand new song from Linkin Park called Lost. Never released before, so this is brand new lyrics from the band, and it's also the first new song that we get to hear Chester sing. Unfortunately, since his tragic passing back in 2017, this was a kind of an emotional song if you're a Linkin Park fan, to kind of hear his voice on a brand new track that's never been heard before. And the lyrics are just absolutely kind of gut-wrenching. It has that it has the screaming, and it has this soft tone lyric in there. He has that voice that is so iconic. It's very sentimental to hear him in a brand new song. Obviously, when he passed back in 2017, it was a huge blow. I mean, Linkin Park is known for Chester Bennington leading leading that band with his vocals. You had Mike Shinoda also throwing in rap vocals, backup vocals, just a whole band. Johan with turntable mixing. You had good drum beats, good guitars through the entire song. So very kind of sentimental, especially for me, because when I started listening to Linkin Park, now this song does come on the release of the 20th anniversary of their album Meteora. That's the album that I kind of started listening to Linkin Park. That's the album that got me listening to this band. I started listening because of the song Numb. Numb was so iconic back when it was released in 2003, because around that time I was in high school. And it's high school. Everyone struggles in high school. Everyone struggles to find their voice, to find their place, kind of find their own identity. And Numb was just that song that kind of was kind of be like the song for my years in high school. So I'm very interested to see what the rest of this album that will be coming out the next couple, and I believe it's coming out in April, is going to have. It's going to have unreleased track demos, live shows, kind of like what they did with Hybrid Theory when they released the 20th anniversary album for that as well. So again, I recommend, if you haven't had a chance, go on to YouTube, watch the music video. It's a really touching music video, because they do this kind of 3D animation, almost like what they did with Breaking the Habit when they did kind of an anime style cartoon video. They kind of looped in past performances to fit the lyrics of Lost. So it's kind of like a brand new version of Chester singing. Very great song. So again, head on over to download that song. And the last story we're going to talk about is, over this weekend, we had a chance here in the Coons household to download Hogwarts Legacy, the brand new role-playing game from Porky's, Harry Potter. I can tell you, me and my wife have been training this game, playing it nonstop this entire weekend. This past week, actually, she has been playing this game pretty much coming home from work to maybe about 9 o'clock at night. She's had full control of the game, so I'm having to learn how to share my PlayStation 5 for the first time, so that was a fun little experience. But Hogwarts Legacy is such a great game. It's such an amazing interactive game. You get to pretty much go into Hogwarts as a fifth-year student. You kind of like have this little ability to see ancient magic. I'm not going to ruin the whole game because I'm still fairly new to this game. I'm not really played deep into this game, so I'm still kind of learning the ropes myself. But again, we ordered the deluxe edition about maybe 2 or 3 months ago, so we got some pretty cool interactive downloads, especially robes, some Death Eater masks, kind of cool scarves. So we got a lot of cool content coming through. So again, if you haven't had a chance, go out and buy Hogwarts Legacy. It's a very addictive game. We had to kind of set alarms here so we can end up playing this game pretty much for 24 hours straight, just because of how good this game is and how interactive this game is. So going forward, we're going to be kind of starting the show with some off-brand topics, not necessarily baseball topics, but once we get into the season, we will do more baseball stories, but we're going to try something with just kind of more off-topic baseball topics to start the show. So last Sunday, we did our National League Central preview. I talked about the National League Central division. I locked in the St. Louis Cardinals as my division pick. It was a very tight pick for me. I think that the Cardinals, Brewers, and Cubs will all be competing for that division going forward. So we had the National League Central wrapped up. We are now in our last 2 divisions, ladies and gentlemen. We are 2 divisions away from completing our division preview, and we're going to start with the American League East. This division last year, if you remember hearing our show last year, myself and my host Chris, we kind of thought that this division last year would send 4 teams to the playoffs. We thought the Yankees, Rays, they're locked in. The Blue Jays could be a playoff team, and we thought the Red Sox, coming off their good season in 2021, an ALCS appearance in that same year, would be another playoff team. Kind of didn't happen. They kind of fell off the wagon very early, kind of struggled to kind of find a winning way, and kind of had a lot of ups and downs the entire season. They started off incredibly horrible. They did kind of get back to 500, but never could stay above that 500 mark. But the team we're going to start with, we're going to start with the team in Baltimore, and I'm pretty sure if you're listening, I'm going to get slack for pronouncing his name, but here we go. The Baltimore Orioles. I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, you're going to say the cookie or the bird. You be the judge of that. So last season, Baltimore went 83-79, and that is a 30-win improvement from 2021, where they went 53-110. And think about that. They had a 30-win improvement from 2021. I think that was the biggest win increase for any team in baseball last year was the Baltimore Orioles, and just how good they were. And they kind of took baseball by storm. When they got into the All-Star break, they were at 500, and you're kind of thinking, we'll see if they can kind of stay at this 500 mark. When the second half kicked in, they were 5 games over 500, 10 games over 500. They were playing incredibly good baseball. They were at one point almost able to challenge for a third wild card spot. And a lot of people are saying, could Baltimore actually get that third wild card spot? Are they good enough to get that third wild card spot? Yeah, we know that they're still a very young team. They did not get to that playoff spot, but the success they had last season kind of sets them up for a great 2023. They did lose Jesus Aguilera over the offseason. He's their first baseman, but they bring in James McCann as catching. They bring in Adam Frazier for second base. So they bring in some good veteran talent, but this is a very heavy young team. I think it's one of the youngest teams in Major League Baseball. But they bring in these two veterans who can actually help them kind of build this momentum that they want to keep from 2022. And that's kind of my key for this team going into 2022. Are they able to keep this momentum going? What they did last season blew everyone out of the water. No one expected Baltimore to be this good. They locked in their first winning season, ladies and gentlemen, since 2016 when they were last in the playoffs. So the fact that they are considered, I'm not going to say they're a playoff team this year, but they're going to be a good team this year. I think they can kind of be around that 83, maybe 87 win mark, kind of in that area. Now, whether they can maintain that is another story, because are they going to be a one-hit wonder? Was last year a fluke? Did they just happen to have a good season last year, and can they avoid regressing? Can they avoid taking that step backward? That's going to be something that they're going to have to kind of find themselves. Again, a very young team, a very young hitting core, very young pitching core. You got a couple of good veterans on the team that can help mold these young players into a great team. So, and again, the pressure is on Baltimore to repeat last year's success. That's something that they're going to have to kind of shake off early in the season. Is this pressure going to kind of build up with them? Is there something that they can do to kind of relieve themselves of the pressure? Now, if they get off to a good start where they're winning series against the Yankees, against the Red Sox, where they're winning the series that they need to win, maybe they'll be a good team. Maybe they'll be a playoff contender going down the stretch. Who knows? But it's going to be living up to that pressure. It's something that they are going to have to kind of I'm trying to think of the right word, kind of like shove off. They're going to have to find something to distract them from the pressure going into next season. So before I get into the next team, forgot to mention the AL East kind of is a little bit of a family drama for my in-laws, basically. So my side of the family, we're Chicago split. White Sox, Cubs, two opposite leagues. Not the same for my in-laws, who are Yankees, Red Sox. My wife is a Rays fan, so you know that if I pick one of these teams not to make the playoffs, I am probably going to get yelled at. So I'm assuming that I'll be yelled at regardless of the fact of if I speak bad about their team. But we're going to start by talking about the Boston Red Sox, and I know I have a bunch of in-laws who are diehard Red Sox fans, so I'm pretty sure if they do listen to this podcast, they'll be kind of shaking their head going, Adam, what are you thinking? You are completely wrong, my friend. But Boston last year, 78-84. That's a 14-win decrease from 2021, where they were a wild card team, 92 wins. Again, could not find their rhythm at all last year. This team was built for another good season. They had a lot of key players that they kept over from last year, but they just couldn't find anything to stay in contention. They had a kind of a horrible start. They were, I think, only had 3 wins within their first 10 or 15 games, if I remember correctly. I'll have to go back and look at the breakdown of wins. But over this offseason, they had a lot of players leave this team. JD Martinez leaves, Xander Bogaerts leaves, Matt Strahm leaves, Nathan Eovaldi leaves. You do bring in Kensley Jansen, you do bring in Justin Turner, and they shockingly bring in Matsuzaka Yoshida from Japan to play outfield for them. So they bring in a good international signing for this team. But can Cora kind of keep this winning momentum going up? He's had some great success with Boston, obviously in 2018 with the World Series. He was obviously out with the team after the Ching scandal with the Astros, where he was involved with that, kind of fired from the team, then brought back on. Something about Boston is kind of eating at me, and I don't know what it is. I don't know whether I can trust this team to be a good team going forward, or if they're going to be going into a rebuilding mode. Now, a lot of these players that they brought in, obviously the loss of Xander Bogaerts is going to be huge. I think he was a great player for this team, and that's a huge loss for this team going into next season. But I think another player you have to be concerned about is Chris Sale. Can Chris Sale retain that form? I mean, he's been injured the last couple of years, Tommy John surgery, a lot of elbow injuries. He hasn't really been the same since he came over from the White Sox for Yohan Moncada back in, I want to say, 2017. So will he have that same success? I mean, he closed out the World Series for them in 2018, so he knows that he can be a closer. He started his career in the bullpen with Chicago, then transitioned into a starter. But I just don't trust the health of Chris Sale, and that's not dogging Chris Sale at all. I mean, he's a great player, but it's just this injury-prone status that's going to be with him going forward. It's hard to kind of be with. So we'll see if Chris Sale can kind of stay out of the injury list this season. And my key for them this year is they're not going to have to compete with New York, Toronto, and Tampa, but they also had to compete with Baltimore. Baltimore finished ahead of them last year, so that was the first time that Baltimore has actually been able to finish above Boston. Boston's going to have to really play hard against the AL East. They have to really kind of get these early series wins against these teams to kind of stay in contention. If they lose their first 3 or 4 series against AL East teams, it's going to be hard for them to make up that ground, I think. I think that they're not going to be able to pick up the slack if they drop these early series. So for me, I think Boston is going to be going into a all-in year or a rebuilding year. Will they go all in? Will they make some trades during the season to kind of help build this team? Or will they say, you know what, we're going to tear this completely apart and we're going to start fresh. We're going to trade all these veteran talents and bring in a bunch of prospects and kind of start fresh. And maybe that's the thing they got to do. Maybe they do have to just start fresh. So we will see what happens with this team going forward. Now we're going to move on to everyone's favorite team, the New York Yankees, or how I'm knowing them, the evil empire of baseball, because they were just winning championships after championships when I was growing up. Obviously, in the 90s, they were dominant. 2000s, they were dominant. They obviously kind of had that little rival with Boston going forward. But last year, the Yankees went 99-63. That's a 7-game improvement from 2021, where they were 92-70. Clinched the AL East last year, made it through the division round, lost to the Astros in a 4-game sweep. This coming off a tough 5-game series with Cleveland, where Cleveland almost did eliminate the Yankees in the playoffs, but they survived that. But once they walked into Houston, it was just a 4-game sweep for this team. They were outplayed by Houston, all specs of the game, pitching, defense, batting, bullpen, everything you could think of. They were just pretty much outplayed from start to finish. Losses for this team include Miguel Castro, Matt Carpenter, Aroldis Chapman, Andrew Benintendi. They almost did lose Aaron Judge. So remember, Aaron Judge at one point was slated to go to San Francisco, but reverted back to the Yankees. Him and Rizzo were kind of their big key additions, even though they were just re-signed. I think those are big additions to keep with this team. Obviously, Anthony Rizzo is a well-known first baseman. He's a good power hitter, playoff experience, championship experience, so he knows how to win in the postseason, and that's that leadership that you want in the locker room. We all know the story with Aaron Judge last year, AL MVP, 62 home runs, set the AL/Yankee record for home runs, breaking Roger Maris's American League record. of 61, which he did in 1961. So, but the thing for the Yankees is health. This team has gone through season after season where injuries have just kept piling up on them. Obviously, Judge, Stan, at one point, one of these players had been on the injured list. So the thing for me is, can both of these guys actually play a full season without going on the injured list? And if they can play a full season without being injured and stay healthy the entire season, this is a very dangerous team. And it's a very dangerous trio when you got Rizzo, Stan, and Judge in that lineup who can take the ball deep, double, drive in multiple runs. They do have caliber defense on this team, but they're more known, in my opinion, as a power hitting team. They got a lot of power on this team just between those three guys. And that's the thing for me that's going to be a key for this team. Can these three power hitters stay healthy? I'll throw Rizzo in to see if he can stay healthy. He's stayed fairly healthy for his entire career. I don't remember seeing him on the injury list for a couple seasons, but can he stay healthy? And if he can stay healthy, along with Rizzo, along with Judge and Stan, it's gonna be good. And Stan needs to cut down the strikeouts. He's a very high strikeout hitter, where he'll just be swinging at pitches outside the strike zone, kind of chasing balls up in the zone, chasing inside pitches. If he can avoid these, I'm not gonna say crap strikeouts or crappy strikeouts, but he can avoid these strikeouts that are swinging at pitches 2 feet above the plate, above his head. I think he'll kind of help this offense kind of take another step forward. Obviously, Yankees are probably going to be one of the top home run hitting teams going into the season. Pitching, I think they'll be a decent pitching team. Obviously, the loss of Chapman in the bullpen, but Chapman is kind of a hit or miss in the bullpen. He hasn't been that dominant. Obviously, he can throw 103 without even thinking about it down the strike zone or at your head. So if you haven't seen some of those clips where batters are pretty much ducking for life when you're seeing a 103-mile-an-hour fastball coming at you, but he also has some good off-speed pitching that he can throw in there as well. So the Yankees, I think, are going to be a team that you'll have to kind of bounce around with. Again, if they can stay healthy, I think this team can be a great team this year. Now we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Rays, and my amazing, loving wife is a Rays fan. I donned the Rays hat tonight because we do cheer for the Rays in this household. And the Rays have been such a consistent team. They've done it just on one-year contracts. They bring up maybe 25 pitchers through the entire season. But last year they went 86 and 76. They were 162 back in 2021. 14-win decrease, however, didn't really matter. They were still able to make the playoffs for a fourth straight year, clinch the AL wild card, lost a heartbreaking series to Cleveland in 2 games, which kind of ended their season. They did lose David Peralta over the offseason, Kevin Kiermaier over the offseason, 2 players I wish they would have kept on this team because I think those are 2 good outfielders you should have kept on this team. He-Man Choi has gone off this team as well. But this is, again, the Rays. If you haven't followed the Rays over the last 4 to 6 years, what the Rays do is they will sign a couple of small contracts, but there will be a lot of trades that they'll make over the season. They'll trade for some veteran players down the stretch. I remember 2021 they traded for Nelson Cruz coming down the stretch, which helped them kind of get that 100-win season. He was a good addition for that team. We all know that they've done this since 2019. Since 2019, they were a wild card team. 2020, they were division champ, World Series appearance that year. 2021, repeat as AL East champs. 2022, wild card team. Still a good team. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the dominant team that we saw back in 2021. But for me, is the Rays need to trust in their farm system. This is a kind of a plan that they have gone with the past 4 to 5 seasons, which is why a small market team like the Rays have been so successful over the last couple of seasons, over the last 5 seasons. This is kind of like a Billy Bean Moneyball thing where you saw the Athletics just doing these small contracts. They're not bringing players that are just going to hit 40 to 50 home runs. They're bringing in someone who can drive in runs, someone who can hit for average, hit more statistical pitching, kind of just players that can fit the system. Uh, so I think the Rays are a good team this year. Are they going to be a great team? I think they'll be a great team. I don't think you'll see a kind of dominant team in this Rays that you've seen the last couple of years. We're not going to see the same thing that we saw in 2021. I think when the Rays just kind of ran away with this division, 100 wins, and kind of were that AL favorite, kind of the repeat as AL champs and get back to the World Series. But if there's one thing I've learned about this team is never doubt the front office of this franchise. And it sucks because this is such a good team, and yet they cannot get the draw that other teams have been getting this over the last couple of years. I've gone to a couple of Rays games with my wife. It's an amazing atmosphere. The Rays do a great job with their fans. I think they have one of the best fan bases out there. They just need a stadium. They need to get out of the Trop. They need a stadium somewhere, not in St. Pete, but in Tampa. I will say getting to the stadium is an absolute nightmare. There was one game we went to before we kicked off a vacation back in 2018. We left where we were in the Orlando area at 1 o'clock for a 4:05 game, and we didn't get to the game until 4:30 just because we hit a ton of traffic when we got into Tampa St. Pete area. So Tampa, please get a new stadium. Please get this team the stadium they deserve. Do not split time with Montreal. Do not make them the Montreal Tampa Rays, whatever the hell they were trying to think of a couple years ago. Get this team a stadium. This team deserves a stadium. They are a winning franchise. You have a baseball winning franchise in this state. Obviously, the Marlins have won 2 World Series. Good for them. But the Rays have been a consistent winning franchise. So get this team a stadium. And I'm going to jump off my soapbox from there and go into our last team, which is the Toronto Blue Jays. Toronto Blue Jays kind of were the same team they were in 2021, only 1 game win improvement after 91 win season in 2021, 92 wins in 2022. They did clinch an AL wildcard spot as well. However, they lost to Seattle in the wildcard round. This year, they really didn't have any key losses. They were able to keep a lot of their key players from last year onto this season, which is very hard for a franchise to do. It's something that you don't see a lot of players or teams do, is keep players to that core for next season. They brought in Brandon Bell, Chris Bassett, Kevin Kiermaier. They re-signed Bo Bichette, which I think is a huge win for them, to a 3-year contract extension. I think him with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They're the 2 franchise players for the Blue Jays. You can tell by I do have the Blue Jays hat sitting behind me, but I will be sporting the Rays hat when I do talk AL East baseball. I think the Blue Jays are going to be a playoff team this year. I think they have made some great improvements, even with these players that they brought in, but not losing a lot of players that they have from last year. I think it's something that is going to stick with them going forward. I think they have a great core of players going forward. I think they are going to be the closest thing to challenging the Yankees for the AL East. The Rays could surprise everyone again like they have them over the last 2 to 3 years and win this division. But I think the Blue Jays have a step up on the Rays in the fact that they are going to be able to contend with the Yankees coming off the bat. And a key matchup for them, and I said this throughout pretty much both the Yankees, Orioles, and Rays, and even Red Sox, winning these key AL East series at the beginning of the season is a must for this team. I think more so for the Blue Jays is if they want to challenge the Yankees for this AL East division, which I believe they will, they need to win the first series they play against the Yankees, the first 2 series against the Yankees. They need to win both those series. They need to kind of take that tiebreaker away from the Yankees, get that series edge over them over the first couple series. And I think that the Blue Jays will be able to contend for AL East title, win their first AL East title since 2015. I think they have the staff to do it. I think they have the core players to do it. It's a great clubhouse atmosphere. I think they got one of the best clubhouses atmospheres going forward, and they're doing a lot of great renovations to the Sky Dome. I still call it the Sky Dome. I know it's called the Rogers Center, but I still call it the Sky Dome. From when I was a kid, watching Joe Carter play, and obviously Joe walk it off in the '93 World Series. They got the home run jacket, where I think it's the celebrations they do in the dugout are just a great atmosphere for this team. So I think the Blue Jays will be a great contender going forward. Now it's time to lock in who I think is going to win the American League East. As I was doing prep for this show, I kind of went back and forth between two teams. I think I was dealing with the Yankees and the Blue Jays. However, I am going to give the edge to the Toronto Blue Jays. I give the Blue Jays the AL East lock this year for this season. I will pick them as my division champs. But I think the Yankees and Rays will both get a wild card spot. I think the Rays will get the third wild card spot again. I think the Yankees take the second wild card spot, which leaves Seattle for the first wild card spot. But the Toronto Blue Jays, in my opinion, will get the American League East this year. I think they have the staff. I think they have the team to do it. And I think they are the best team in this division. I think this will be the strongest division, too. AL West is a good division. AL Central, you're going to have some competition there. But I think when you look at this division from top to bottom, each team can make a case that they can win this division. I'll even throw Baltimore in there. I think Baltimore can make a strong case. Maybe it's not to win this division, but maybe just to challenge for a playoff spot or be a spoiler team going forward. So I'm going to lock in the Toronto Blue Jays as my team to win this division for the 2023 season. All right, so as I lock in the Toronto Blue Jays, we're wrapping up the end of the show. Again, thank you guys very much for the support, for tuning into this show, for interacting with the show on Twitter. We're going to be doing a lot more once the season comes to fruition. We'll be talking World Baseball Classic. When the World Baseball Classic starts, we'll be breaking down each team. Rosters were dropped for all the teams, so I'm very excited to kind of dive into those rosters to see who has the best roster going into this Classic. Can the United States repeat as Classic champions? Can the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, can those teams kind of overtake the United States? Can we see the Netherlands, who have been a great team, kind of be contending? We got a lot of great teams coming up in the World Baseball Classic. Next Sunday, we will return to our normal slot on Sundays at 10 p.m., which will end our division previews, and we'll be talking about the National League East division next year. A lot of question marks coming into this season for every team in the National League East. Phillies, can they avoid a World Series hangover? Will they be able to build on the success last year off of that wild card spot and build it into a division contender? Are the Braves still a lock for this division? The Mets have one of the craziest off seasons with the amount of money they dropped over the off season. Will this spending that they did calibrate into a championship team? Do they have enough to kind of overtake the Braves, overtake the Phillies? What about the Marlins? We know that the Marlins made an announcement today that they are bringing back their teal jerseys. I'll give you my thoughts on bringing back their Flashback Friday teal jerseys in celebration of the 2003 World Series at the 20th anniversary of that. And what about the Washington Nationals? What's going on with the Nationals? What will they be doing this season? So that'll be next week on Sunday. I hope you guys tune in to next week's show. And again, don't forget to download this podcast. This podcast will drop tomorrow morning. I'll probably be putting it together tonight, and we'll have it drop probably around 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So don't forget to download this episode wherever you get your podcast. Again, thank you guys very much for tuning in, and I hope you have a great night.